우리나라 영어신문에 나온 기사들입니다. Try 39 cafe tour in Seoul. For visitors from overseas, it would be impossible to not note the proliferation of coffee houses here. There seems to be more than just one around every corner in any Seoul neighborhood. This abundance of coffee shops has led Koreans to be disconcerting when it comes to choosing a cafe. Among this journey, among the many different coffee houses that beckon with a unique concept, think animal cafes, vinyl record cafe shops, and even a 침묵 cafe, where patrons must remain quiet and the conversation is prohibited. You might want to check out some independent local cafes that have prominently featured in TV scenes. If you enjoyed the popular 2022 TV drama 39, a romance series centering on the 20-year friendship of three women that is stronger than their familial bonds and romantic attachment. A coffee shop tour following the footsteps of the show's characters can be a unique way to explore Seoul's many cafes. Prosecutors to retry Weinstein, New York. Prosecutors asked for a September retrial for Harvey Weinstein during a hearing Wednesday in Manhattan. The disgraced movie mogul's post-court appearance since his 2020 rape conviction was overturned by an appeals court last week. Dear Annie, still seeking support. My mother, who is now 62, has always been a dominant personality. Keen on having things go her way. I am 34, an independent graphic designer, and I pride myself on being self-sufficient and creative. But every time I share aspects of my life with her, be it career choices, romantic partners, or even smaller decisions like adopting a pet, she critiques them, often unsolicitedly, making me second-guess my decision. Her disapproval, which is always veiled as concern, is making me not want to be around her. I'm starting to avoid sharing any personal news with her at all to dodge the inevitable criticism. I understand she might be doing this out of love, but it feels more controlling than caring. How can I communicate my need for support without judgment, struggling for independence? Refrain from displaying your plans or action. Work behind the scenes until you master what you are trying to achieve. If you prematurely launch your next move, someone will judge you unfairly. Protect against interference and false information. Yoon to hold rare press conference. Presidential office may also revive abolished senior secretary post. Japanese car makers make moves on EVs. Toyota, Honda post U.S. sales gains, Hyundai, Kia down. Inflation slowed to 2.9% in April. Fresh food prices drive growth, but Finance Ministry noted easing. Korea's inflation slowed down in April, with consumer prices increasing at a relatively milder pace of 2.9% on year compared to the previous month, data showed Thursday. Inflation once again fell below the 3% mark after 2 consecutive months of 3.1% increase. OECD ups Korea's growth forecast to 2.6%. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, lifted its growth forecast for Korea this year by 0.4 percentage points as the global economy recovers at a stronger than expected but diverging pace. The OECD predicted that Korea's economy would grow 2.6% this year. In all, its biannual economic growth report published Thursday, adjusting its projection upward from the 2.2% figure announced in its February interim report. Fed hold rate steady as government remains wary of possible volatility. Korean kids and teens growing taller and stouter. Korean children and teenagers have grown taller and matured faster in the last decade, according to the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. U.S. father reunited with kids after long fight. Case spotlight Korea's parental abduction problem. After a year-long journey to retrieve his children, an American father, John, who made headlines for his treadmill protest in Seoul, was finally reunited with his children in the United States. When will Yoon's one-way approach end? From a spectator's point of view, the winner of the first bilateral meeting between President Yoon and majority Democratic Party leader Lee on Monday is Lee. He kept the reporters from leaving and spoke for 15 minutes. Inflation is another type of tax. If inflation is not defeated, suffering from the degradation of lives awaited us. Why the rush to appoint a special prosecutor, bracing for security risk ignited by Trump? Former U.S. President Donald Trump made it clear that he would stick to his that he would stick to his previous position of demanding more defense cost sharing from South Korea than the current level, which he perceived as free of charge. If he returns to the White House upon winning the presidential election in November. In a recent interview with Time magazine, the former U.S. president implied that he would press on with his previous idea of a complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from South Korea. If the very wealthy country pays very little, he was quoted as saying, "Why would we depend on somebody? They are a very wealthy country, and why wouldn't they want to pay?" It is the first time Trump laid out his position on Korea's defense cost in the middle of the U.S. presidential race. He sent the clear message that Seoul should expect a fresh round of bargaining once he is at the back. America's frustrating search for a soft landing. In the first quarter of 2024, GDP in the United States grew at an annual rate of 1.6%, nearly a percentage point slower than expected. At the same time, core inflation remained higher than anticipated, with consumer prices, excluding energy and food, increasing at an annual rate of 3.7% up from 2% in the fourth quarter of 2023. The pandemic financing developing countries need. What difference can 2 hours make? When I was a professor at a university, I excused absence but did not forgive lateness. It is my belief that tardiness is worse than absence. In life, 1 or 2 hours may only be a short moment, but there are countless cases where the difference of a few hours changes the fate completely. Number of coffee franchises in South Korea rise 13%. The number of franchised coffee branches in South Korea rose by more than 3,000 on year in 2022 on growing demand for food and beverages with the ebbing of the COVID-19 pandemic and the expansion of budget brand, the antitrust regulator said. Golden chance to liquidate babies' gold rings. How gold prices prompt parents to cash in on baby rings while gift givers feel the pinch. Seoul alert overseas missions to NK terror threat. U.S. Fed says rates will stay at 2-decade high. The U.S. Federal Reserve emphasized Wednesday that inflation has remained stubbornly high in recent months and said it does not plan plan to cut interest rate until it has greater confidence that price increases are slowing sustainably to its 2% target. Sold to more than double its military drones by 2026 to counter NK threat. Over 60% of South Koreans support 100 million won childbirth incentive survey. Over 60% of South Koreans supported an initiative of providing 100 million won, $72,500 cash incentive for each newborn, aiming to tackle the country's low and declining birth rate. A government survey showed Thursday. Our HBM chips are sold out until 2025, SK Hynix CEO. Key suppliers for NVIDIA dismissed the oversupply concern, citing overdriven production. Former IEA chief called for strong global governance to achieve net zero. Tesla charging units elimination raised worries for other makers. Elon Musk's move to lay off the department responsible for Tesla's electric vehicle chargers has touched up worries in the auto industry that EVs from other automakers will have trouble joining Tesla's network. Apple set for big sales decline as investors await AI in iPhones. Apple plans to add generative AI to its iPhones and revive sagging sales in the crucial Chinese market will be in focus this week when the tech giant is expected to report its biggest quarterly revenue decline in more than a year. Arizona to undo abortion ban. The Arizona legislature approved a repeal of a long-dormant ban on nearly all abortion Wednesday, sending the bill to Democratic Governor Kathy, who is expected to sign it. Two Republicans joined with the Democrats in the Senate on the 16-14 vote in favor of repealing a Civil War-era ban on abortion that the state highest court recently allowed to take effect. The ban on all abortion, which provided no exception for survivors of rape or incest and only allowed for procedures done to save a patient's life, would still be active until the fall. Georgian police dispersed crowd of protesters. Georgia's parliament on Wednesday approved the second reading of a bill on foreign agents that has been criticized as Kremlin-inspired, as police fired tear gas and stun grenade to clear a large crowd of protesters opposed to the draft law. Protesters remain on UCLA campus. Hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters Thursday remained behind barricades on the UCLA campus despite the police orders. Two leave as officers were poised to move in on their fortified encampment that was ringed by an even larger crowd, including supporters who locked arms and curious onlookers. The face-off to Trump. Ruling bloc should meet with Trump to widen bipartisan network in Washington. Former U.S. President Donald Trump suggested that should he be re-elected, the U.S. could withdraw its forces from South Korea if it does not pay more to support U.S. troops stationed here. I wanted South Korea to treat us properly. As you know, I got them to. I had a negotiation because they were paying virtually nothing for 40,000 troops that we had there. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee said. In a recent interview with Time magazine, the number is actually 28,500. We have 40,000 troops and in a somewhat precarious position, to put it mildly, because right next door happens to be a man I got along with very well, but a man who nevertheless he's got vision of things. Trump said he had told Seoul that it was time to pay more for the upkeep of U.S. forces in Korea because it had become a very wealthy country and South Korea had agreed to pay billions of dollars. Why I learn a language in AI age. As the AI boom spread and puts down ever deeper root questions about the future of foreign language education have arisen. If AI can translate and interpret on demand, then why learn foreign languages in the first place? Is there some innate value in learning foreign language that negate the convenience of AI? These questions are important for South Korea because foreign languages have an important place in the educational curriculum and in career development. Foreign language learning on a massive scale began in the last half of the 19th century as public schools spread in Europe and North America. Foreign languages, also known as modern languages, began to replace Greek and then Latin in high school and later at universities. Classical languages were considered essential to a well-rounded education aimed at a small elite. The spread of public schools changed this by bringing education to the masses, increased travel in Europe, and immigration in North America made modern languages more appealing, which stirred the shift away from classical language. For South Korea, the shift from the practical to intangible benefits of foreign language brings changes not just to how languages are taught, but also to which languages are taught aside from English. Expect the European languages to fade as Asian languages attract more interest. a supreme rethink of pro-life but rationally. Things have gotten horribly crowded here in America's virtual ERs. As always, doctors in white-coat coats and nurses in light-coat blue scrubs. Are urgently applying their expertise to help, sometimes even save, patients who include desperate pregnant women who arrive at their hospital emergency room suffering life and death emergencies. Med school to raise admission by up to 1,509. Doctor government standoff continue as new chief of doctors group started tenure. I will confront any challenges to enhance the fundamental rights of our medical professionals. Descendant group slams ministry for plan to relocate independence fighters bust. Government should destroy bust rather than move it to another location. BOK faces daunting rate dynamics due to steady Fed. Will Min Hee-jin have to leave Ado empty-handed? SK Hynix report explosive sales of AI chips. Yen jump sparks talk of second Japan intervention. Experts suspect Japan stepped in market to keep yen from weakening beyond 160. Ford Jeep hit hard by soaring $1 exchange rate. Government to build more domes for migrant farm workers. Advocated argue dome rules too restrictive. K Royal Culture Festival offers journey back in time. Japan's excessive demand. Tokyo should stop pressing neighbor to sell its line stocks. In parallel with the international precedents, the U.S. Congress passed a bill mandating the sale of China's app TikTok, highlighting the complexities of balancing national interest with global market dynamics. This action was taken to contain the political exploitation of information by an adversarial state, namely China. Seoul and Tokyo, however, are not adversarial states. They are friendly and cooperative neighbors sharing a history of collaboration and mutual benefit. Japan's concern about potential foreign domination of their people's data are understandable, although this practice is common in global market. However, market-oriented democratic governments should refrain from violating the property rights of foreign companies. Cookie-cutter gentrification. I visited Frankfurt and Helsinki last week. There is always a strange sense of anxiety when you go to a new place, especially one where you don't speak the language and are unfamiliar with how everything works. It's a weird combination of excitement about experiencing something new and the instinctive fear of the same. Underlying all that is a soft static of irritation that not everything works the same way it does back home. I mean, why in the world do other countries use rounded electric outlet of 220 volts? At least there are Burger King and McDonald's restaurants aplenty. Which was what really struck me on this trip. Everything was already familiar. In Germany and Finland, the drive from the airport to the hotel was as familiar as the drive from Ronald Reagan National Airport to my house in Northern Virginia, or from JFK Airport to my parents in Jersey. What makes us happy, healthy? In the early 1970s, researchers built on the study's earlier protocols, conducting the follow-up surveys every 2 years. Predatory nature of globalization. Developing nations have long complained that globalization has enthroned Western currencies in such a way as to subsidize living standards in the rich world. Last year, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS, even talked of an alternative common currency to replace the dollar. West countries perhaps think that their ambitious goals for aid diffuse arguments over the exorbitant privilege. Without people, there can be no power. South Korea's ruling People Power Party is at a loss for the election after a major defeat in the general election. The PPP only secured victories in 19 of the 122 constituencies in the Seoul metropolitan area, which is considered a barometer of national public sentiment. If the PPP does not make efforts to win the hearts of the majority through bold socioeconomic policies, they may face defeat in all future election. The Macron moment. Who is the most macho? Blinken blinkered in Beijing. Asian giant put pressure on Europe's economic model. Real privacy law to fight the big tech intrusion. Peter's son won't allow mom to find happiness. My sister Sandy divorced her husband 15 years ago. Her oldest son Nick has never gotten over it. Is 30 now and has treated her badly over the years. He not only vandalized her home but has also said horrible things to her. She maintained a relationship with him despite his behavior, supporting him emotionally and sometimes financially. Sandy has been engaged to her long-term boyfriend for 3 years, but Nick is hostile toward him. He calls him names. He calls him names, denigrate his faith, and refuse to accept him as a part of the family. Her fiancé has grown tired of this treatment, and I'm afraid it may cause their breakup. Cares about what others think or do, and more about your contribution to your life and those you love.